quite familiar with what the term RSA is. That is basically state law. And the state law, RSA 231 133A, in the NRO 190 of the city 213, give the Board of Aldermen have the sole authority to assign or alter address numbers of buildings and other property along any private or public way in the municipality. We are clearly within our jurisdiction. That letter has been provided to you. It came in a packet. I specifically made sure. I do recommend that you probably need to do maybe further study or homework, and or if you did not receive this, please let me know, because we may have a problem, and I will talk to our clerk to make sure that you did have this information. But it was under my direction. It was supposed to be provided to all members of this particular board. So I would like you to get familiarized with that. Number two, I have no objections to have somebody from E911 come in and to address these concerns with the board. But most of the state reps here are quite familiar with a 28A issue. Why is not the E911 an RSA? The reason it isn't, it's a guideline, it's a recommendation. They make it an RSA, then maybe the state ought to pay for all these changes in the addresses. So it reverts back to RSA 21-133, which gives us the sole authority to do so. So I don't know what you heard from the corporate attorneys, but if you want to write that down, you can have them discuss RSA 231-133A, and maybe they could discuss that, because as far as I'm concerned, we're completely within our legal authority to change these particular numberings. These are special circumstances that come up. I am quite sympathetic. You are entitled, as always, to vote on your pleasure, on how you feel on the issue. If this gets shot down, it's nothing. This is what this board does. But again, I think you said some not completely accurate statements. I think you need to do a little bit more research, because I'm going by what the RSA states, and we have the authority of that. I will now recognize Alderman Lopez in order, and then I'll recognize Alderwoman Klee, and then I'll recognize Alderman Laws.
For my part, if it's 12 or if it's 9, I don't really think it. Either one is, lined up with the streets next to it and it's an odd number, or it's number 12 across the street from 10, so they'll know where it is that way. Either way, I mean, I can see the value of either one. I do think that this discussion is really the result of the numbering committee's recommendation. So I was asking for a clarification on that, because I think the numbering committee, we absolutely have an expectation and a right to ask them to come and explain how they make decisions, because they keep numbering things without considering the existing tenants, because they're trying to adhere to E911, which we don't necessarily need to. So I would like to talk to them and say, could we come up with a plan for either doing this citywide and not one issue by one issue and one frustrated homeowner versus one development person at a time? Or could we stop doing it that way and just acknowledge that people who are living there have some priority over people who have only recently decided to subdivide their lot and make changes? Either way, I just would like to speak to them. E911, I think their position's pretty clear. I don't actually have an expectation that if we said, please come, they would. And if they did, they're just going to tell us what we're expecting to hear. The issue that I see in terms of the city is a city issue where, yeah, we have a lot of numbers that are 29As, 29Cs, 14Fs, whatever. So this is something that we should probably be tackling as a city if we really want to tackle it in advance of some possible state legislation in the future, or just because it's a good idea. But I think a good step for a future meeting would be to just invite the numbering committee. As far as numbering this specific one, I'm not in favor of having a current resident change their number because somebody down the street has added a development. And I don't see a reason to here if the neighbors and the developers are all in accord that either putting 9 or 12 is sufficient. And I don't really care whether it's 9 or 12 personally.
Okay, Alderman Clee.
May I speak even though I'm not a member of this committee?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
I'd like to comment on the fact that I'm seeing more and more lots being split. And I have a concern with people that have had this. And I don't know whether or not we have to pay for deeds or anything of that nature, but I do know that there is a personal cost, dollar-wise, to these people, as well as an emotional cost of having to get a hold of everybody you know. And then there's a confusion of when the mail comes in and you change your address from this to this. I just don't think we can do that to our citizens. So I would really hope that this committee would vote to, as Alderman Lopez said, 9, 12. It doesn't matter as long as they don't make 7 have to change their numbering scheme.
Thank you. Alderman Laws.
I don't want to rock the boat here. I completely agree with Alderman Clee, and that the Medeiros family shouldn't be subjected to changing their home address after living there for 15 years if there's something we can do to get around it. I'm wondering if perhaps Alderman Jetty would be more amenable to the idea if instead of numbering lot 2249, number 12, we numbered it number 11. So then we adhered to the odd number side of the street. That's pretty much, that's all I got.
Why not? Alderman Jetty.
So the addressing committee, and you know, I know what the law is. I know we have the authority to assign any number we want. I'm not disagreeing with our authority to do that. What I'm questioning is why, you know, the addressing committee, you know, said that they would rather it be 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. But if we wanted to, if we don't want to do that, if we want to let the Medeirosos keep 7, they're recommending that we change, that we make 2249 lot 9. It would remain an odd number on the left side of the street. And so I would, you know, in the, you know, sensing the, you know, to accommodate the Medeiroses and sensing seeing the sense of the committee, I would suggest that we do 9. I'm wondering why you came up with 12.
Well, again, if you look at your map, do you have your map with you?
Yes.
Okay, so please, if you can follow, and if you look at the map, if you gave it number 12, now, I guess it's whatever you want to call anything, but basically, if you gave it number 12, the only number that's going to get skipped over is number 7. So as you come down the street, you're going to have to turn around in the cul-de-sac, and immediately you'll be facing right there, number 12. Now, did I take a dot and throw it against the board, and that's the one that I hit? 12, no. This was in consultation with other people, Sarah Marchand, and other people that I sought as the chairman on this committee, sought counsel and doing the lead work on this. Not really that against. I'm going to push the motion through that it came up with 12 because this was previously determined. I had conversations today with Ms. Marchand on this particular and said, what do you think about 12? And right, and well, you know, I did a lot of work in coming up with tonight's agenda to make sure that it perfectly said exactly what we wanted to say and complete and everything, and did a lot. And I guess that's my particular job as the committee chairman. But I didn't hear anything or input or anything from anybody prior to the meeting to kind of come up with anything. So I think what it does, it's a very short street. It isn't really going to really matter much. I guess the objective here to look at, is it really good going down in sequential? No, it isn't. But will it keep one of our constituents happy is the key. A person that has been in their address for a very long time, And just because a developer wants to make money, he's supposed to change the world, I think we're asking an awful lot. So please don't lose sight of that. You know, when we look at it, coming and changing to 12, it isn't really going to matter. Again, it'll follow right after 10, it'll skip number 7, and it will be number 12. And it basically works. And again, this was done in consultation with the community development and everything. Alderman Gedge.
Yes, I think when we can make someone happy simply, my question as yourself as a professional firefighter your entire life, does it make a difference? The street?
When they dispatch a particular street, and some of the streets are longer, they give pinpoints. Basically, it runs from one street to another street. But in my 35 years working here on the fire department, I've had dispatches for Russell Ave and Russell Street, Coburn Ave, Coburn Street, Saturn, both are in mobile home parks, by the way. So there's many misgivings. So when you make the dispatch, you listen to the cross streets and reference and where it's going through. So if it came up with the situation of our good friend that was down on New Searles Road, that we assisted her in renumbering that particular address, that would have came up from Shady Lane to Wilmington. So the fire department would still be able to look within that block, knowing that's where that E911 had planted, and it should have not so much of a problem with it.
That's my concern, and I
Right.
think that this is all that counts to me. If we can make somebody happy, and you, as a fire person, understands this, I
Right.
say, let's do it.
And there's also, too, if I may say so, to be good citizens, it also is a requirement within the city that everybody should have their house numbers on their mailbox, on their house, so that they can be read clearly from the street. That's good practice, particularly if somebody was ill in the dead of night, somebody forgets to put the porch light on, at least it will assist the emergency apparatus in responding. So that's another thing, good thing to particularly follow. Anybody, any other comments on the matter? Okay, then,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I just want to say that we can, if we make the Maderoses, let them keep their number 7. I guess I'm not clear as to why you want to make the new lot an even number, 12, as opposed to giving that lot 9, as was recommended by the addressing committee as an alternative.
Well, I don't know what addressing committee recommended. As chairman of this particular committee,
Right in their letter, Mr. Chairman. The
I
letter that you
didn't.
pointed to me. It's the letter from the addressing committee dated May 9th. To the third paragraph down, says if this committee's recommendation to continue to move forward in a way that will not create a non-compliant situation for future residents, we recommend sheet E, lot 2249 is assigned the address of 7, and sheet 188 reassigned to 9 Don Street. If the board determines that special unique circumstances warrant a diversion from E911 standards, this committee recommends that 2249 be assigned the number 9. And when I spoke to Attorney Leonard, she said the reason was that she said that the fire marshal and the representative from the police department were adamant that the left side should be odd numbers and the right side even numbers. And so that's why they came up with, making that new lot 9. Let the Maderoses stay at 7, but the new lots would be 5 and 9. So at least they're odd numbers on the left side. On the right side, they say they should all be even numbers. So we could keep the Maderoses happy, and I'm sure the new lot owners don't care as long as they get a number and they can build a house. And so give that new lot, those new lots 5 and 9, which would keep the odd numbers on the left side. And we keep the Maderoses happy, and we keep the addressing committee half happy. But I think your proposal would make
All right, are you all set, Ms. Alderman Jettie?
yeah, I was
Thank you.
hearing the phone. I was-
Let me clearly say that your reference to paragraph 3 would have put the Madeirases in the same jeopardy that we're trying to avoid here.
Right.
Which I don't think is the flavor. Number 2, referring back to RSA 231, 133A, and NRO 190 to 213, if we want to call it 12, it can be 12. And so if there's no further comment, let's move it to the vote, and you can vote appropriately on whether you wanted to go with it or not.
I
Yes,
do have-
Alderman
I
Jettie.
do have a further, I said the third paragraph, I meant the fourth paragraph, and I read the fourth paragraph. The fourth paragraph says, if we're not going to do what they recommended, their first recommendation, they're recommending that we let the Maderoses stay at 7, number the new lot 9, so the odd number is on the left side of the street. That's what I misspoke when I said the third paragraph. I meant to say the fourth paragraph.
Okay. All right, that being said, thank you, Alderman Jettie. Can the clerk reread the motion, please, and we'll call it as a vote?
Excuse me. I just
Yes,
want
Alderman.
I want to propose an amendment to the motion, which I think
Pardon?
we have to do. I would like to propose an amendment to the motion, which I think we have to do before we vote on the motion itself.
An amendment?
I just want to amend it to 9 instead of 12.
Did you call for a vote before?
I
Yes,
call
we
for the
did.
vote.
Hand up and I wasn't recognized.
Yeah, but I called for the vote.
Okay.
Okay. Again, you may vote whatever your conscience is. It's not that I'm you're hanging a hat on a number here. I think the thing that the objective of this committee is trying to assist
With respect,
a
because
resident.
you just
It
pointed out that I
doesn't
was hanging
really
a hat,
much
I
matter.
don't think I'm the one hanging a hat on the number here.
Okay, all right. It's just that, if it fails, then, we can amend it. Well, basically,
Don't
yes,
think we
Alderman
can.
Jettie.
I appeal your ruling that we can't make an amendment. We haven't voted yet.
Well, I'm going by the decorums that we have been, I call for a vote. Mr. Jettie, Alderman Jettie. I call for the vote. But I'm not going to be, let me put it this way, according to Mason's rules, I can allow it, but the thing is, and I will. But the point is here is I called for the vote as chair, and I would respect the respect of the chair when the vote was called. We in the State House completely understand that when a vote is called, you vote. But I guess I could be nice and say that Alderman Lopez, I will entertain your amendment to expedite this particular
Thank you
matter.
very much, I appreciate it. I just want to make an amendment to change the numbering from 12 to 9, so that the odd numbers are on the same side.
Okay. All right, so the motion, can you write that down?
From 7,
That it
12 to
would be
9.
basically the motion would be that sheet E, lot 2249, be assigned the street address of 9, okay, would be that. Okay,
Shall I read the entire thing then?
okay, please, yeah.
The motion by Alderman O'Brien to recommend that the Board of Aldermen grant the street renumbering petition in part with the stipulation that sheet E, lot 239, be assigned to the street number of 3 Dawn Street. Sheet E, lot 2248, be assigned the street number of 5 Dawn Street, and that sheet E, lot 2249, be assigned the street number of of number 9, that there be no address change to sheet E, lot 188, currently assigned to the number 7 Dawn Street. That's amended.
Okay. Everybody understand the amendment?
Excuse me, is that your amendment?
It's not my amendment, it's the Lopez amendment.
Yes, I finally have one.
And
And it was this one.
now, if I may speak on the amendment, is I did a lot of work on this. I'm not trying to be a tough guy. You know what I mean with it. I did a lot of work with it. I wish you were here, Alderman Lopez, earlier to maybe come up, you know, to hear these things. And I strongly encourage, it's taking time at this meeting on a number, you know, it's equally important, but I came up predetermined and worked with the 12. I am not going to support the amendment due to the tardiness of it. I think it's just going to complicate, you know, something that has been hard worked on in the past and come to a solution here. But again, I recognize the authority of this board and respect the will of this particular board. So I encourage you to vote on what you want on the Lopez amendment as not, but I am not going to support it. Okay. And that being said, could the clerk please just call the roll of the members on how they particular vote?
Certainly. Alderman O'Brien?
Nay.
Alderman Lopez? Yay. Alderman Jan Schmidt? Yes. Alderman Jettie?
Yes.
And Alderman Gidge?
No.
The yeas have it.
Okay. All right, in accepting the Lopez amendment has passed, could you reread it and we'll vote as we'll have to put down in this because of the lateness of this, but put it down, motion by Alderman O'Brien as amended.
Which is the
Okay,
O'Brien amendment.
huh?
With the
which is the
Lopez.
O'Brien
With the
amendment.
Lopez amendment. Motion.
Motion by Alderman O'Brien, including the Lopez amendment, recommend that the Board of Aldermen grant street renumbering petition in part with the stipulation that sheet E, lot 238, be assigned the street address of 3 Dawn Street. Sheet E, lot 2248, be assigned the street address of 5 Dawn Street, and that sheet E, lot 2249, be assigned the street address of 9 Dawn Street, and there be no address change to sheet E, lot 188, currently assigned to the street address of 7 Dawn Street.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Whew. Wow. Now, on to other issues. Unfinished business resolutions.
There are none.
Okay. Unfinished business ordinances.
We have ordinance 18007 prohibiting placing or blowing yard debris in the street.
Okay, this came, the Committee Infrastructure recommended final passage with the proposed amendment. We did, and it was assigned to the BPW with a favorable recommendation, and the proposed amendments on 4/26/18, it was referred to the committee on 6/12/2018. Therefore, I think there's a motion by, will the clerk read a motion, pending motion by Alderwoman Melissa Goja, please?
Motion by Alderwoman Malizia Goya to amend ordinance 18007 with the language previously proposed to the full Board of Aldermen prior to its re-referral.
To his referral.
Re-referral, period.
All right, will the Alderwoman like to speak to a motion?
Yes, and again, I'm moving to amend 018007 with the language that was suggested by BPW. And I believe all of you received copies of that. It was, I believe, attached with your agendas. But it is about, first of all, the history. This ordinance originally referred to the placing of snow, and so the addition was or yard debris. And it talks about blowing any yard debris, including but not limited to leaves, branches, and grass clippings into the right-of-way. And to that was added sidewalk. And then also suggested for amendment was that the section shall not apply to the following situations. Placement has been directed or requested by the Division of Public Works, so when they ask you to put your 3-foot piles of branches along the side of the road for pickup, or cleanup or collection of material that's simultaneously occurring. So in the situation where someone has someone cleaning their lawn and they've blown the material into the side of the street, but it's obviously an active work site that is being cleaned. So that is the language that has been proposed for an amendment. And just for a bit of history on this, I went back through my emails. There was a situation that was brought to my attention, and I then contacted code enforcement on November 14th, 2017 regarding the situation. And the response I got back was, we can speak to this individual. We get a lot of complaints of a like nature, but there's not a current ordinance that addresses this type of violation. I followed up then with Director Marchant, and she spoke to me about the amount of time they spend addressing this situation because people's first call is to code enforcement. And again, the fact that they have nothing available to them to address this situation. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to follow up with the chief, the police chief, and he indicated, because I know there had been a comment about putting in that there would first be a warning issued, and he indicated that a warning can always be issued, and that is certainly at the discretion of the police officer. And I think we all saw that there were noise violations on Main Street, and warnings were issued for people. And when I asked about the fee, the fine that would be assigned, again, that is something that is at the discretion based upon what the severity of the situation is. I can tell you that, and again, in talking with code enforcement and Director Marchant, typically once people are made aware of the fact that this is in violation of a city ordinance, it stops, and there is not a need to go back out and deal with repeat offenders. But at the moment, there are people who know this is something that no one can do anything about. So I am hoping that we can move this out of committee and back to the full board with the amendments as read, the proposed amendments, and get this to the board for final passage. Thank you.
Alderman Tezza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if I could, I came to the meeting tonight because I was one of the people who expressed some hesitation at the when this became before the full board. And my hesitation is a couple-fold, and my point tonight is just to come to the committee and bring it to the committee for discussion. I'm not on the committee, so I can't vote on it tonight. So I understand the want to have something else on the books to try to enforce, essentially to try to deter people from putting yard waste in the road when it's not supposed to be there. And the hope is that by doing that, you then create less work for the police department, for Director Marchant and her division. My concern, quite frankly, is once there are penalties associated with it, that more people are going to be calling and saying, come out here and enforce this because my neighbor is putting things in the yard. And, it creates more work. I would rather have the police department be responding to calls and doing patrols than responding to neighbor disputes, which I know, because they're such a professional organization, they respond to every call that they get. So those are my concerns. you know, the state has RSAs on this already. One of the options that the state has for people who are dumping debris into the roadway is that they charge the folks for whatever the cost is to go out there and collect collect that waste. I think that's a reasonable, if the city has to go out and essentially clean the road because someone is putting their leaves or whatever other debris. I think even without a warning, I think that is more reasonable than potentially having $1,000 fine. And again, I don't think that people are getting $1,000 fines, but there's going to be a time or an officer who is upset that he's spending his time going out there and starts giving people these fines. So those are my concerns. I apologize to the committee. I can't stay around for too much longer, but I trust the committee to do with it what they will.
Now, thank you, Alderman Tenzer. I know you have pressing engagements. Seeing that, is there an additional comment? Okay, seeing none, if you've got a, oh, yes, Ms. Alderman Jettie.
You say that with such exasperation.
Oh, and so no, you're welcome. I mean, this is getting used to it.
Sorry.
So before you leave, if I could address a question to Alderman Tenza, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
So before you leave, is your, of course, that, police officers don't determine the amount of the fine. That would be up to a judge if it ever went to court. But would your objection be alleviated if instead of the last sentence, which is what the law is now, we're not changing anything. The last sentence reads, "Any person who shall violate this section shall upon conviction be subject to punishment as provided in section 1-12 of the National Revised Ordinances." And that section, consistent with state law, just enables the city to issue enables a judge in enforcing city ordinances to issue fines of up to $1,000. Would it alleviate your concern that if instead of referring to section 1-12, we referred to chapter 74, which is the administrative enforcement provisions that this board adopted a couple of years ago, and it provides for the issuance of, it enables city departments or officials to issue citations, and there's a whole table of fines and stuff, but for any penalties that are not listed, for any offense that's not listed on the table, it provides for a first offense of $50, and if paid within 10 days, $100 thereafter. Second offense, $100 if paid within 10 days, $150 thereafter. And third, for a subsequent or third offense, $200 if paid within 10 days, or $250 thereafter. Limiting it to those penalties, would that assuage your concerns or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be an improvement, certainly. And again, I mean, I'm just, a lot of what I'm concerned with is just the resources for the city departments and having to enforce this. And I understand that they, I believe Corporation Counsel, essentially said he's never actually prosecuted one of these. In which case, I say, then why do we need it? I mean, I understand why people want it, but I think it could have unintended consequences, and I suppose if it does, then we can always come back and change it. But I think your suggestion would be a good start.
Okay.
Alderman Schmidt.
I think we can answer why it's never prosecuted. simply because that first stop by a policeman at your home saying, we have code that says that this is something that isn't done in our city, I think we can prove that that works for the snow issue here. And I think it would work for anything that is obstructing the roadway. And I can see where this would be the perfect place for this, that it is fair warning and that it will make it safer.
Alderman Gathright.
Actually, I think my statement during our Alderman meeting was kind of what brought this back here. So what Alderman Jetty proposed, I'm a lot more comfortable with than what was previously proposed in terms of the finances.
Okay, who else had their hand up? Go down the line, Alderman Law.
I just wanted to say I like Alderman Jetty's proposal. I think it's a fair compromise. $1,000 seems a little outrageous. Yeah, and I think that using a tiered penalty structure, if by the third time you're not figuring it out, that's on you, you know? So I agree with you 100%.
Okay, Alderman Lopez.
When we did the revisions to the code ordinances that Alderman Jetty was referring to, it was also because the code enforcement departments were running into issues where they would issue the violation, but because it was going to court, it gave people, they could just keep doing it, and then the city would either have to fight them in court or wait until they actually went to court, and then they would clean up the day before. So I am also in favor of Alderman Jetty's proposal because it keeps us from retreading in history. I recognize what Alderman Tensa is saying about making sure that we don't have a situation that can be abused. I don't think either one is a situation that can be abused, but this one is certainly one with more levels and more oversight.
Okay. The chair looks upon this as another one conundrum here. Basically, let's look at this particular ordinance, and let me just clearly state it. This is already adopted basic language. We have it currently on the books for snow removal. I think we all can understand that Alderwoman Melissa Goja threw in the brush provision. So we're not rewriting new law. So let's look at the history. Was there any real particular problem legally with the existing snow removal? And the answer is no. But it didn't seem to be any complaints from the police department or anybody else. I know, speaking in my term on the fire department, we've had situations where people came in, and particularly for evacuation purposes, have second means of egress out of parking lots and some of the developments. And people had plowed snow there, and with the threat of basically given, having them being fined or anything, that they cannot put snow in front of those points of egress. Well, that usually had done the trick. And once people were aware of it and what it was, a point of egress, it didn't necessarily occur again. But at this particular point, we have, the motion was made, we have it on the floor. Unless the motion wants to be withdrawn, I'm going to call for a vote by Alderwoman Melissa Goja. Yes.
I am willing to entertain Alderman Jetty's amendment. I mean, he and I have been working on this together. So if he would like to further amend the language at the end of this ordinance, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. All right.
Because, and I will explain why. Although this is kind of code enforcement in what he's referring to, the police, as it states in there, city officials who are responsible for enforcing those ordinances can institute these fines. And there are other situations in the city that involve motor vehicles and things that are going on where when we don't have a code officer on duty, there is a police officer who is assigned to address those code violations. Mm-hmm. So I think that this is in keeping with all of that. So Alderman Jetty, if you could just give us the citation for as provided in, and we will remove one through 12, and what shall we add there that you just read?
May I?
Please.
Go ahead, Alderman
Finish
Jettie.
my thought, please.
Is there any reason we couldn't table this and let the legal department rephrase it?
If I may,
Alderman Malaysia Goja.
I would be willing, I think we need to move this forward. And rather than coming back here to the committee, my recommendation, if the chair thinks it's reasonable, is that we make the amendment now, it goes to legal, and when we have our next meeting in July, we will have feedback from legal. And if they say, no, this isn't going to work, we'll have that feedback. And we can do some final work at our Board of Aldermen's meeting. But if we amend it now, then it can go to them and come back. And that works. That has been done multiple times,
Right.
where things are often amended in committee, go to legal, and then come back to the full board.
Okay, if I may, I would move to amend by striking the last part of the last sentence that says Section 1-12 and replacing it with Chapter 74. Or actually, we could just keep the section and just change 1-12 to 74-1 through 5.
So as provided in section 74, 1 through 5?
Yes.
The chair does have a question possibly for Alderman Malaysia Goja. There are other amendments to 018-007, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the Jettie amendment will be encumbered or will be placed with these other
Right.
amendments to 018-007,
Right.
correct?
So we'll just put all of this together
Okay.
as one amendment. So it
Right.
would,
Is any questions of the other committee members? None.
Yeah.
Alderman Jettie.
I believe that at our last meeting, we amended it. So what went to the Board of Aldermen?
I could perhaps answer that. It basically was accepted, but it wasn't really, the amendment wasn't really accepted. If you remember, again, there was a lot of conversation going on, and it got kind of waylaid. So to come back, I was told, and I think Alderwoman Malaysia Goja was told, that what we did was unfortunately not what was intended. It got waylaid, and so now we're coming back with the amendment. So we're on the correct path as we're right now, if we could stay this course.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
yeah. And that is correct. We
Good.
had
Thank
lots
you.
of conversation, but never moved to amend. We sent it back to committee without amending at the board.
Okay,
So
so,
I would then move
there you go.
that this committee recommend final passage.
No, excuse me, just a matter of,
I thought we were, amending.
okay, I would like to, us to pass, basically, I would like to entertain a motion, if I may, just to assist, the amended 018-007 with the inclusion of the Jettie amendment that was previously proposed to the full board of the Alderman prior to its referral. Would that be the correct motion?
I know that's here, and let's just do that. That's
Yeah,
okay.
and that way
I
that
know
would
why
clean
this
up.
was written,
That
but
would
that's
clean up
okay.
what the question on the amended version. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Alderman Jettie.
I'm very sorry, but I'm having,
Oh, no.
I'm having second thoughts about because the last sentence says, any person who shall violate this section shall, upon conviction, be subject to punishment as provided in. But Chapter 74 doesn't provide,
About a conviction.
you know, it takes it away from the court. You don't have to use police officers, you can use other city officials, and they just issue a citation. court's not involved, so there's no conviction, it takes it out of the criminal aspects. And the language we've got there, that pre-existed, talks about conviction, and I think we want to, I think we would rather say, and that's why I thought maybe legal should have an input here, but
Well, Alderman Jettie, that's why I strongly urged to kept it the way that it was, but prior to the amendment, because you could get yourself into a legal loophole, which is, I think, what you're doing right now. You're giving this thing more teeth, in a way, with the amendment, as you just explained, you know? So it is a point of caution.
so we could, if I may speak out loud,
Oh, absolutely.
we could change that last sentence to say that this paragraph, this section shall be enforced in accordance with the provisions of chapter of section 74-1 through 5.
I think that works.
And if I may, as chairman, to seek the counsel of my colleague, Alderman Melissa Goja, you did mention that this new amendment can be reintroduced when it comes back up to the board. Am I correct?
Correct. 'Cause this
So
hasn't been introduced
if
at all.
nobody is comfortable with this evening, and what I'm referring to, Alderman Jettie, if you really wanted some time to sit back and chew on this, you could withdraw that and then before it comes back to the Board of Aldermen as amended, come back with the amended copy, which is the goldenrod copy, so you could come back with that, so, you know.
The famous
The
goldenrod.
famous goldenrod copy, correct.
If I, Alderman O'Brien?
Yes.
If I may, in looking at the wording here and trying to match it up, we could say any person who receives a citation for violation of this section will, oh, where did I have the wording here?
Maybe we shouldn't do this now.
So if we just say,
I think let's just go with Alderman Jettie's, yes. This section shall be enforced as provided in section 74, 1 through 5. And then it talks about it being a citation. So let's just go with that. And again, if legal thinks we should change it, they will let us know, and we'll have that new wording to come forward as an amendment at the full board. So I would suggest that we amend it with the language we had discussed at the beginning of the meeting, along with the language regarding this being enforced using section 74, 1 through 5.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yep,
then?
I absolutely am. And I am sure if there's a problem, legal will let us know.
Okay.
If there's more specific
At
language.
this particular time, the chair does recognize that Alderman Lopez did he leave?
Yeah.
Okay, but we're still at a quorum, so, okay, so.
So the motion is to amend.
Okay, so a motion by Alderman Lizzie Goja to amend 018-007 to include previous amendments and the Jettie amendment as
Right, and
amended,
the-
as previously proposed to the full Board of Aldermen prior to his referral. Okay, seeing that, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
And then I would move to recommend final passage as amended with the proposed language we discussed earlier this evening.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion for final passage? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
New business resolutions.
There are none.
All right. New business ordinances.
Ordinance 18016, establishing a no parking zone on the west side of Pine Street.
Today, if I may speak to this, I don't know if anybody has, but I peeled over and I looked at 018016, and unfortunately Alderman Lopez left without basically being able to explain this particular ordinance. I did make communication with Mr. Cummings, and I says, who's in charge of the downtown parking? And I says, are you familiar with this particular ordinance? And he says, I did hear of it, but nothing really came up to me. I don't know what Alderman Lopez's intentions with this. Unfortunately, he's not here to explain it. But in my communication with Mr. Cummings, he would like to have the opportunity as, downtown director to pour over this and then also bringing up a question with engineering, okay? And so I think, unfortunately, with the absence of Alderman Lopez, and seeing that this may need to be reviewed by Mr. Cummings in engineering, I would like to make the motion that we table it until the next meeting when further information can be provided on this, okay? So if the clerk can read it, the motion, please.
Motion by Alderman O'Brien to recommend table.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, okay. Further ordinances.
Authorizing a stop sign on Lock Street at its intersection with Orange Street.
Alderman Clee, I'll allow you to make a motion.
Thank you. Hopefully I get it right. I move for final passage of O-18-17.
Very good. There's a motion for final passage of 018017. Alderman Clee, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much. The reason this came to basically my desk, so to speak, is that Lock and Orange is a very unique kind of intersection. Lock is a two-way from Orange all the way to Chandler, and on the other direction, it's a one-way. So this technically is a three-way intersection. Orange, on both sides of Orange, have a stop sign. On the Lock side, it has a blinking yellow light. The problem is that even though with a blinking yellow light, many people will still stop for it, which creates confusion and so on. I spoke with the mayor's office, director of photo, the city engineering, and so on, and we came up with different theories, ideas of what we could do, and the bottom line is that we cannot use stop signs to slow traffic down, and this does not do that. This is very specifically a safety issue. I have walked up and down Lock Street, and as the Iovinos pointed out, is that there is a true safety issue. The other day, I sat there while there were three people in the intersection, each one kind of playing, do I go, are you going, am I going, are you going, kind of type of thing. To which end, the person 2 cars down on Lock Street started yelling out profanities, asking the person whether or not they knew what a yellow light meant. So then they kind of gunned it, and while the other 2 people are going, we almost had another accident. There have been a number of children that have been almost hit there, and that is, as the Mr. and Mrs. Iovino pointed out, is a walking path to Mount Pleasant, which means there are a lot of children on that corner. After speaking with Director Photo and her walking on Lock Street with me and witnessing different things going on, we agreed that the best, at least at this point, the best solution would be a stop sign. A stop sign would be put in, it would say all way, and the yellow amber flashing light would be turned to red. I really would like to see this move forward to the full board, and I think it's the best solution, at least at this point in time. Thank you. Any questions?
Okay, further comment, Alderman Laws.
I'd just like to say, I use that intersection several times a week, and I couldn't support this motion more. It's definitely a safety issue. It's definitely a confusing setup right now. And if there's children walking by there, I think that we have a responsibility to make sure that they're not going to get run over by people who don't know how to use traffic lights.
Any additional comments? Seeing none. All those in favor of 018-017 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Any comments by any alderman? Alderman Laws?
I feel like it might be appropriate to say that I really, really respect everyone on this board, and there might be some moments of tension and dissent, but the fact that we are all working towards the common good, and we're all very respectful and cordial with each other, it means a lot to me. And I want you to know that I appreciate all of you and all of your input, especially the more senior members who know more than I do. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Very good. Any other additional comment by any? To echo Alderman Law's sentiment, I feel the same way too. Although I think some of it is kind of comical, we all have a difference of opinions and to be respecting, and that's what we basically do. I think we did great work tonight. We did keep a citizen happy in that they could keep their numbers, and that was good regardless of what your opinion was on that. That's fine. And everybody has the right to express and everything. Like I say, as chairman, I do a little extra work, and I think that's what a chairman basically does do. It's what I did as chairman when I was up at the state, as vice chair of transportation and acting chairman of transportation. You do the little bit of extra work, and like I say, some of the things. But that doesn't supersede the rights of what this board wants to do. And I want to clearly say that although I seem I may not have, I wish somebody had spoken to me earlier, but the thing is, I do not mind doing the work, but I do respect your opinion and do encourage you to vote and work hard on this committee. I think we've got a great committee, and I'm glad that everybody that's on it and the other members who have shown up, I think we are doing a fantastic job, and I think we made the Madeiras very happy tonight, so I think that's also a good thing. So like I say earlier. So without further ado, out of one of the committee members, I am looking for a motion. Yes, Alderman Gidge.
Let's go home.
A motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. And the motion, we hereby adjourned at 7:25. Excuse me, 8:25.